Welcome back to the Word for the Valley podcast, where we've been following along with Pastor Mike through the book of Matthew. And we have come as far as chapter 15, verse 26, and the conversation between Jesus and this Canaanite woman reaches its turning point. And instead of pushing back, taking offense, or trying to elevate herself, she does something remarkable. She agrees with him. She accepts her place in the story, not with shame or resentment, but with humility and faith. She says, "Yes, Lord, I understand the order. I know who I am, and I also know that even the crumbs from your table are enough." So it's very interesting. Let's get back into it with Pastor Mike at chapter 15, verse 26.
But it says now in verse 26, that he answered and said, now he's talking to the woman, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs." Now he is verifying her understanding here by this interaction and saying to her, listen, you have a daughter at home, right? You cook a meal on the stove. You prepare something, a PB&J sandwich. You set it out in front of your daughter, hoping that she was of sound mind, sane enough to be able to actually eat the sandwich, right? When she sits down at the meal, you don't take the plate away from her and then dump the sandwich out on the floor and make her stand there and watch the dogs eat it. How cruel would that be to the daughter? This mom, as a mom, wouldn't understand this. It's not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And she said, "Yes, Lord, that's right. I agree with you 100%. Yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table." And she accepts her lowly place as the little dog in the story. Yes, I understand the order. And honestly, it's okay for me to be who I am here. Jews first and the Gentiles. I'm just a Gentile, right? But even Gentiles get blessed from the offfall, from the crumbs of what has been given to the children, right? In Romans, it says that the Gentile church was grafted in. The stalk of the tree, the stalk of the religion is not ours, right? Again, anti-Semitism in the life of the church is nonsense. It's actual stupidity. If you call yourself a Christian and you don't like Jews, you need to reconcile with the fact that your Savior is not a white guy from New York City, right? From Washington, D.C. or the United States of America or any Western society at all. He's a Jewish man, right? With Jewish features and a Jewish accent and a Jewish language and a Jewish mom and a Jewish dad. Better be okay with Jewish people, because I think there's going to be a few of them in heaven. At least one, Jesus himself. No, I'm not. There's more than that, but kind of thing. But you can't disregard that. It just doesn't make any sense, right? Yes, Lord. Yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table. Despite God reaching to the Jews first, there is more than enough for the Gentiles. Now, beautifully here for this woman, she accepts her position as the lower place. Again, you see it through this entire scene. She's not up there fighting against this system, picketing the house, getting all of her friends to come over there. You know how bigoted these guys are. Jews in Gentile territory treating Gentiles like they're garbage. Kind of like, how many other ways would people handle this situation? She stays and she humbles herself even lower than she was already humbled when she got started. And as a result of it, Jesus answered and said to her, "O woman, great is your faith. Let it be done to you as you desire." Because the only way to come to God is through faith. You do not come to God through tradition. You do not come to God through position. You don't come to God because you're in the majority or you're in the right or your team is bigger than their team. None of that matters. When we come to God, God is the majority. We are the minority. God is the only one right. Everybody else is wrong. God is the only one perfect. Everyone else is a sinner. And if you do not come to God along those lines, you cannot come to God. The beauty of it is this. Once you just recognize who you are and are willing to confess it, humble yourself, And he is willing to receive anybody who does that, right? As long as they come to him, look, in faith. Great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed. Can you imagine that party? Her daughter was healed from that very hour. When she got back, what do you think they did? What did they do first? Throw a frisbee? But what do you do? Right? Some math problems? Probably not. Right? Let's learn multiplication now that you're in your right mind. Probably not. But some great celebration. Finally, a daughter who doesn't spaz out into full demon possession at any point in time. And typically in demon possession, the demons would work to try to kill, destroy, and hurt the daughter. We see in another case when a demon-possessed man has a young boy, that the demons would try to throw the boy into the fires and off cliffs and in dangerous places at all points in times if they ever had a chance to do it. Right? Do you think that first night she stayed up all night long? You know what it's like when you bring your first baby home and you're excited kind of thing, and then but they cried because you're on a feeding cycle and you're working through these kinds of things. And so when Julie was feeding Evan, hey, it's for you. I don't have the equipment. Please go take care of this kid. Kind of thing. Like I'm back to sleep. She get up, feed the baby, go back, do the whole kind of thing, right? And the first night that the baby sleeps all the way through, mom doesn't sleep at all. From like the time that the baby usually would cry to the time that the baby's, finally awake in the morning. That was a great night. I got 6 hours in a row. Julie's like, I got 2 total, kind of thing. I was waiting for him to wake up and just never did. But it is a party nonetheless. It's a celebration. We're getting close. Here we are. They'll be humans someday and not just remote eaters, kind of thing. Just someday. Her daughter was healed from that very hour. Do you think this woman ever regretted humbling herself in the way that she did for the sake of her daughter? In the world, sometimes people will do brutal things to themselves in an effort to provide for their families, provide for their children, allow themselves to be mistreated, hurt, used in some ways. As long as my kids are okay, right? Here, this woman, all she does is humble herself before Jesus. And as a result of it, her daughter gets healed. She gains faith, and Jesus calls her woman, right? Which is, it's like daughter. We're together here. Woman, great is your faith. Now, let me just make this comment because we have to in the day and age which we live in. We are all a minority. You have to understand this. We are all a minority in one way or another. The interesting thing is about the Jewish religious leaders and the confrontations that they had with Jesus is that they are not the majority at the time when they're trying to impose the majority view upon everybody else in Israel. The scribes and Pharisees are not the majority. The Romans are. The religious leaders of Jesus' day are an oppressed people. They're subjugated. They're paying taxes to a dominant foreign power controlled by Italians, the Romans, right? And hating it, but still in some ways trying to maintain their position of power within their little class structure, not realizing what God is trying to communicate them to the very beginning is that they're not in charge at all. The reason why the Romans are there is because they hadn't submitted to God. Right? It's remarkable. Sometimes you see in these, we just don't think big enough. Sometimes like we get in these little groups and little pockets and little towns, and this group is subjugating this group, or this group is the dominant power in this town, and this group is the subjective or the being subjected in that town. And you're like, well, and they're racist and they're bigoted and they're mean-spirited and they're hard, and they don't realize, like, you do realize there's a bigger fish than your little group of 10. And some days God's going to make you call an account to it. I don't believe that minority and or race issues are as much societal and cultural as they are personal. It's very much how you see it, how you respond to it. And in some ways, God wants all of us to respond to him as the minority. None of us come to him, to God, in the dominant position of power, in the dominant group. Again, we all come needy. We all come less, right? The religious leaders of Jesus' day, they thought they were in charge. They thought they were in power. They didn't have any power at all. But it didn't change the fact that they perceived themselves to have power, right? Dominant cultural, societal powers perceive themselves in that way when it's not the case. It's not the case. The big race issues in this country will all change in a moment. When Russia invades Afghanistan and moves towards Israel, you think the Ukraine is a problem. Ukraine is a problem. It ain't nothing, right? But we get all wrapped up in, race riots and race issues and these kinds of things, or gender rights, gender conversation. Like, that's all fine. Again, when God gives you the ability to speak into it, to address it, to do it. But if you're working with somebody who needs changed, you don't talk about that stuff. You talk about where they're at with God and his offer that's extended to them. And you encourage, well, nobody treats me fair. Yeah. But if you humble yourself to the Lord, he will. Well, you're telling me to decrease, you're telling me to diminish, you're telling me to not stand up for myself, to humble myself. That's exactly what I'm telling you. And you will find that if you humble yourself before the mighty hand of God, that he will exalt you in due time. But if you come to him proud, he will humble you. And that breaking is tough to the super rigid, right? That is really tough to the super rigid. My wife still talks about growing up on Guam, because to her it's a bit of a joke, because she didn't mind it too much. I think in some ways it was something that was promoted within the family, or at least valued to some degree within the family. But when she grew up on Guam, she was the minority. The white people were the lesser people, the minority people, right? She still tells stories that in high school, they made fun of the hair on her legs, or how white her skin was, or the shape of her lips, or, these kinds of... Don't talk to my wife about any of this stuff. This is all secret stuff that we're going to edit out of the teaching before she hears it later. I just realized I shouldn't be saying, but you point out somebody's, kind of glaring things that people in high school picked on them for. Now I just told all of you what those things are, right? Because she was the majority skin color. When she comes to the United States of America, she's still very much half New Zealander, right? She's still in some ways very much a minority, but her skin color doesn't look to be that different. Evan, when he was applying to college, he tried to get the minority scholarships because he was 1/4 Kiwi, and they all rejected him, right? Because he didn't look like he had the right racial profile, the right kind of minority. He didn't look that part, so he couldn't get that part, right? But it's how you feel about it, right? My wife doesn't grow up bitter. She's not grown up bitter, being made fun of because she was different. She recognized that her family was on Guam to share the gospel of Jesus Christ, and as a result of it, part of it was to be made fun of. And that's okay. That's just part of the deal, right? If part of the story in your life is some really difficult times and situations in your own heart, right? I don't think some of us realize that some of the greatest benefits that God has offered to us in our lives are some of the deepest hurts. Some of us wouldn't have come to Jesus if we hadn't been abused when we were a child. Some of us wouldn't have gotten saved if we hadn't. Mike Smiga's testimony reminds me of that all the time. I don't think I would have listened to anybody share the gospel if I hadn't needed to, get stuck in a program where I had to hear it, kind of thing. Right? Oftentimes, God allows these painful situations to show us where we stand. The more we fight to avoid them, the more we try to provide a mechanism where nobody feels any difficulty and nobody feels any struggle and nobody feels any less. First of all, it isn't going to happen here on this planet. Again, you go to a different culture, you go to a different place, you may be the minority. Or you actually may be the minority right now and you don't even know it. And actually, if you're a Christian right now, you are the minority. You're not a majority. You're not in the power position. Right? That's bypassed the United States of America. Any hope of a religious right or Christian coalition is gone in this country. And it may be to the greatest benefit of the church. Because then the church can stop worrying about it and fighting about those things and just start sharing the good news of Jesus Christ in the places where God has given to us. Maybe we'll have a heart for the less fortunate. Maybe we'll be willing to go to places where people are broken and hurting, rather than trying to go to the cool places and sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. Sometimes people tell me, like, I've been sharing, and nobody's listening, nobody's hearing. Like, where have you been sharing the gospel? At the country club? Well, yeah, like nobody needs Jesus at the country club, or at least they don't think they do, right? That's tough ground. One of the things we noticed when we had the chaplains going into the Sunbury Community Hospital, Brad and John, and back in the day when it was Joe, nearly every single visit, somebody was either asking to be prayed for or receiving Jesus on a regular basis. Why? The fields are white on the harvest. There. People are processing life and death things. Right? Right now, we're just too busy trying to figure out who we want to root for at the Super Bowl. Right? And the NFC East just stinks. So we got nobody to cheer for, right? The Bengals. Who wants to root for the Bengals? And the Rams are worse. Like, just big problems that we have here in the United States of America. But life and death come to a crux. They come to a place. And if in our heart all we're trying to do is elevate to the power position. We want to be in the cool kids club. Then simply that effort keeps us away from actually coming to Jesus at all. You're not a cool kid. You're not all that smart. And I know that about you because I am like you. Human. Right? I don't understand the space-time continuum. How many dimensions are we working with right now? 4? 10? Einstein says there's 10 dimensions. I barely understand 4, right? X, Y, Z in time, I can't draw it. I have no idea how it works, right? I did Calc 4 in college. The only way I passed is I had a really smart guy in my group who actually understood it. And I think he was the only one in the entire room, maybe even including the teacher, that actually understood calculus and how you can measure where a point on a guitar string would be at a particular time, giving the length of the string and the diameter of the string or the material of the string and all this kind of stuff. And he could tell with a mathematical graph that would be right there at a particular point in time. And be like, I just want to learn how to play a guitar. Could I just chords? I learned a chord. Hey, look, I got to learn a chord, right? The prof would bring a guitar in. He'd play most of the time too, because I'm pretty sure he didn't understand what he was talking about. Right? It doesn't even take long to kind of get to the edge of your own limited understanding. Especially when you're dealing with life and death types of situations. And you go to a hospital room and the doctors start talking. Bothers me. But it happens all the time. And they're using words that no human should ever have to use. They're literally speaking in tongues, right? I think we have this thing. And you're like, English, sir, please, could you explain this in a way that makes sense to me? And they're kindly patronizing. Okay, yeah. And they try to explain it in the way that you understand. But then they usually say, I know you can't really understand this. And you realize, like, I'm underwater here. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. It's more painful than I thought it was going to be. I'm not as smart as I thought I was. I'm not as good as I thought I was. And all of the people that want to just tell me, well, just tell yourself that you're really a pretty nice person. Just tell yourself that you're really good. Just talk yourself up and these kinds of things. I haven't really ever met anybody that's worked for, and actually the people who propound it the most seem to be the most oppressed. I just can't follow that by that kind of mentality and that mindset and approach to these kinds of things. But what I have noticed is that people that seem to disregard it are the greatest blessings and benefits to the people around them. Again, you can, if you want to, I guess, walk in a protest rally, sign a public petition. If you're really bold, you'll tweet about it, Facebook about it, Instagram about it, Snapchat about it, because that's what really bold people do to change the world. That's complete sarcasm if you didn't pick that up. That is total sarcasm. But then forget, pay their own bills, keep their car on the road. In addition to how to bless somebody else, they don't have enough money to pay their own bills. How are they going to give money away to bless somebody else? Hope for another government handout, expect somebody else to give them another bailout. But here we are, we're changing the world from your mom's basement. When the Lord is saying, listen, just come to me and I'll lead you out here, and you actually may find miracles happen in your own life that would have never happened any other way. There is no political movement that this woman can take part in that will get her daughter back to normal. None. Zero. She could fight for her rights. She could come in and make demands. She could tell Jesus what's up. She could. You guys are mean. You're mean-spirited. You guys are all hypocrites. You said this, and now you're treating me like this. She could do all of that. Bring her friends over, petition, run them out of town, she could do all of that. But do you want the greatest deficiency in your life touched by Jesus is the question. Do you want the greatest deficiency in your life touched by Jesus? Because it's only then that the healing comes. We're going to be challenged in all of life. I'm not going to verse 29. So we're going to be challenged in all of life to walk by faith. Right? I think sometimes we lament that. Like, we do a lot of work in our lives to not have to actually trust Jesus. Right? I'm good. I got the thing I set up, the market, my stock market stuff, my portfolio, my retirement. It's all set up. And then, Russia invades Ukraine and the market goes whoosh, and we're like, oh, yeah, what to do? We were trying not to have to trust Jesus. I was good. I felt comfortable. You should just be just as comfortable because Jesus hadn't changed one little bit. He didn't change one little bit. If he tells you to invest in the market, you just may be paying that forward, like everybody else paying Social Security. All right? So that's just the way it goes. All right? And there may be other reasons to do it than your own safety and security. Because your own safety and security will never come. Right? We need to make sure America's good. It's not. It's not good. Right? But God is still working. And he is still very much good. And if we keep our hearts and minds and focus on where it ought to be, it may be that in the last days, it just may be that we will see the Holy Spirit poured out upon all flesh. We actually may see one last great outpouring of God because we don't have everything in place. Again, the greatest benefit to the church just may be persecution in this country. Because then finally we get treated like the church almost in every other part of the world. You do realize where the church is growing fastest? Those are the countries where the church is being persecuted the greatest. And the reason for it is that those people have a clear understanding of what Jesus is really all about. We still think that Jesus is about making America great, when Jesus is actually looking to save Americans. Right? He just wants us saved, walking with him. And it just may be that the challenges are those very things that he's allowing in our lives to build the kind of faith in us that we will need for the next challenge. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. There's a lot of contending voices in our day and trying to just get us off. The question you have to keep coming back to is, have you fellowshiped with Jesus today? Are you abiding in Christ? Are you in obedience? Is there anything in your life that he would point at and say, that has to change, where you have kind of deliberately ignored it for a week or 2 weeks or a month or 2 years? Or are you right current with Jesus? Are you walking with Jesus? And are you doing exactly what he wants you to do today, to be the kind of person he wants you to be? I think we will find that if more of the church did that, then our greatest hope for systemic change would come as a result of that. But too much effort trying to make systems and cultures change without focusing on the heart of man.
We learn that this woman didn't find healing through power, politics, or pressure. There was no movement she could join, no argument she could win, no demand she could make that would restore her daughter. The only path to healing was coming directly to Jesus. And that leaves us with an honest question to sit with. Do we actually want the deepest deficiency in our lives touched by Jesus? Because when we come humbly, Jesus meets us there. And it's only there that real healing begins. All right, that's all for now. Thanks for joining us. This is the Word for the Valley podcast. So long, everyone.